There is perhaps nothing more frightening for this generation to hear than we are facing anything that could be likened to September 11th, 2001, the day where this nation and the world changed forever. But thanks to our lack of preparation, the speed of technology, and maybe more than a little arrogance, we are facing another 9/11, this one of the cyber variety. Our guest is director at the Center for the Study of Fraud and Corruption, and associate professor at the Graham School of Management at St. Xavier University in Chicago. Let's welcome William Kresse to MidPoint. Thank you for joining us again.
Good to be back with you again.
Let's talk. It's another day in paradise because I don't have to worry about putting anything up bad on social media today. All I'm doing is working and getting the truth here. You know, though, that when we tell people that there's a potential cyber 9/11, Joe Beer Can, Jane Beer Can out there right now, the average person will say, oh, come on, will you please? You've got to be overstating this a little bit. How can we make them understand that this is not an understated problem and that this could eventually come right to the doorstep, into the living room, if you will, of every American?
Well, I think it would be a good idea for Joe Beer Can, as you put it, to maybe keep a log for a week and write down every time that they relied on some sort of electronic mode of communication, whether it's watching Newsmax TV or going to the bank and getting cash from an ATM, using a credit card. All of these things use this cyber network that we've crafted. Unfortunately, it's a very vulnerable network and can be taken down by the terrorists, who we know are sophisticated in IT matters.
Is it vulnerable because maybe we, when we say we, those people who created the internet worker today, never really had the foresight to look way ahead and see what it might become? We basically made it the way it is, very easy to hack into.
Certainly, it was a matter we always kept looking for newer ways of making things more convenient, making them more accessible, without considering the downside, without considering the potential of a terrorist attacking that network and taking it down, without realizing exactly how necessary this network has become in the lives of ordinary Americans. We have not gone back and taken that step. Plus, doing that isn't profitable. What is profitable is going ahead and making the next innovation.
Professor, you just hit on the point. Is it not fair to say that the biggest problem here is companies, people are so worried about making that extra few $1 million that we have basically let this slide? Not important as long as the bank account still goes up.
Right. But then when we get hit with the major losses because we've been vulnerable, that's when we make the investment. You see it going on right now. Everyone now is getting in the mail the replacement credit card that's got the chip built into it. That's because the credit card companies, the banks, have realized they're losing too much money because they've been using an old technology on credit cards. When, unfortunately, something would happen, if there was a terrorist cyber attack, maybe then they'd realize that the losses are so massive they should be putting in the controls and the restraints in the matters now.
When we use the phrase cyber 9/11, give us an example of worst case scenario and how something like this hits. What would we see happen?
Well, what I would imagine, and it's funny, I had this conversation with my wife just yesterday where we're saying, if another 9/11 comes, will it be a physical attack like the original 9/11? And we speculated that really we're so much more vulnerable by shutting down the infrastructure, shutting down a power grid throughout portions of the United States, through our major cities. Can you imagine what our cities would be like if we had a power outage lasting several days or weeks? If our financial systems collapse so that money couldn't be accessible, so that folks can't go to the bank and get cash or use a credit card anymore. I think we have to prepare for those things. We've been told since 9/11 we should have in our homes a preparation kit so we could last several days if we're told to hunker down and stay in space. Maybe we should add to that some currency and things like that in case these cyber systems break down.
When we look at all this, people will say, okay, Professor, I get it. The power goes out, but aren't there backup systems? Come on, we have ways to get back online real quick. All you have to do is, some people will think, just go outside, put some gas in the generator, start it up, bang, we're right back in business again.
Well, you're back in some kind of business at a limited basis for a little while. But even if it were to take 48, 72 hours to get the system back in place. You're talking about loss of billions of dollars during that time, plus potentially the loss of many lives.
Is the single biggest problem that we have in moving forward is maybe we don't connect the dots? Is it just that simple? When we see something happen, a little thing happen, whether it's hubris, arrogance, naivete, whatever it is, we don't put them together fast enough.
I think that's part of it. And unfortunately for us, the bad guys have realized it. Since 9/11 and since the takedown of much of the leadership of Al-Qaeda, the terrorists have learned to decentralize, to spread themselves out, to keep themselves away, such that you're not going to see a big, massive meeting of all the bad guys getting together. You're going to see these small networks out there working in the dark sites of the net, making alliances with folks who are better at cybercrime. But we have to be sensitized that when we see something like that, the little hairs on the back of our neck should go up and tell us that this is something that we should get ready for.
Fair to say, though, there's a lot of people out there who would say, wait a minute now, you're talking about looking into my bank accounts, watching my internet traffic, watching where I go. There's a lot of people who would say this is wrong in the first place. We have to stop governments from doing this. But don't governments and law enforcement agencies have to dig a little bit deeper? It's the only way they can uncover these things.
In many ways it is, but in many ways we've got more intelligence than we know what to do with. It's the ability of being able to cull through the intelligence that we already have to find the pieces that might point to a terrorist attack in the future. Sometimes it's not just gathering more intelligence, sometimes it's being more intelligent with the intelligence we have.
I'm just curious, Professor, are you ready for the cyber 9/11? Because we talk about everybody being ready at home. I take it that you've got your emergency kit ready?
I almost hate to admit to it, but yes, I do.
Okay, and your kit then I would imagine contains cash.
It contains cash and some small precious metal coins.
See that? We worry all the time about storms, earthquakes, and so much else. This is something else we have to worry about. But as you pointed out, this is something that can shut us down for a long period of time. Professor, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks so much for your time, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to cash checks later on today and have some money ready.
Good idea.
All right, take care. All right, dangerous storms on the way today. Thunderstorms producing large hail and damaging winds, all with the added possibility of tornadoes. Something else you have to worry about. All right, that and more with Jessica Reyes. Here's your Newsmax weather update.
Hey there, how's it going? I'm Jessica Reyes with your weather from coast to coast. We'll kick things off across the southwestern portion of the country where we're dealing with a high fire danger. Meanwhile, moving along into parts of San Antonio for today, into parts of Texas, we're dealing with a flash flooding, the threat of severe thunderstorms. So keeping a close eye on all of that. And speaking of flooding, a lot of that by the Gulf of Mexico, New Orleans in the eye of all of that, and so is Pensacola across northern portions of the state of Florida. Into Central Florida for today, we may see some showers, but not so much the further south you go. If you're in Miami for today, you're dealing with some nice beach-like conditions. Across the northeast for today, high pressure dominates. With that said, lots of sun for us across the east, into the nation's capital, partly sunny, and into Boston, mainly sunny, great for an outdoor lunch. Here are some of your daytime highs.
All right, coming up a little bit later on, there is medical research being done at this moment all around the world looking for cures to diseases. The World Health Organization wants it done a little bit differently. They think it will help everybody and maybe even find those cures faster. Nick Tate will join us later and a whole lot more when we continue right here on the show that questions everything. This is MidPoint.